Thank you for inviting me to be with you on the 75th anniversary of the independence or declaration of independence by the Naga people. I am also honored to share uh, my feelings and also to have been able to hear all the views and all that has been said by speakers before me. Right to self-determination is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Unfortunately, the government of India and many other countries do not accept this right for the nationalities that are part of their nation state, which they came to inherit at the uh, end of various colonial empires. The history of India as it was conquered by the British is pretty well known. Nagas are not a people who were fully conquered as such. Nagas remain quite independent and internally very independent throughout the British colonial rule. Britain maintained a kind of a liaison relations with the Naga people. Unfortunately, when the Nagas, in fact, if we look back, the Naga people's struggle for self-determination is more than 100 years old. It begins with the Naga Club, which was established more than 100 years. The Declaration of Independence happened because all the negotiations that the leaders of the Naga people had held with the leaders of the new emergent Indian state, including a 10-point agreement with then governor of Assam, Sir Akbar Hydari. India decided to not recognize all these dialogues, all these negotiations, and declared that the entire area of Naga Hills would remain an integral part of India. It was the non-acceptance of the Indian state or the offer of dialogue and negotiations that finally led the leaders of the Naga national movement, as you all remember, to hold a plebiscite in all the areas of Naga inhabited areas. And also, after that, after the plebiscite, which overwhelmingly supported by all the Nagas that we should remain independent, that the Universal Declaration of Independence was made by the Nagas a day before India became formally independent on the 15th of August. Naga Independence Declaration, as you all know, came a day before. Again, if we look back, when Nehru went to talk to the Nagas, Nehru did not want the Nagas to have any say in that meeting with him. No dialogue. The Naga leaders were told that the chief of India has come to only tell you what India is going to do. Naga leaders, the traditional leaders of the Naga community who were present in that meeting, turned their back to him and walked away. Nehru couldn't take it, as we know, and he decided to send the Assam Rifles. So if you look back, the Nagas did not begin the hostilities. The Nagas did not begin the use of arms. It was actually done by the Indian state, the so-called leader of a great democratic country. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. So Naga is being blamed all through these years for having uh, taken to violence is in fact a false propaganda. Yes, Nagas have taken to arms. They took to arms to defend their right of self-determination, which was denied into the process of dialogue, and then they were being crushed. And some of you who are pretty young perhaps do not know how horrible the occupation of the Naga people's homes and homeland was done by the Indian army. Bombed villages, bombed out. Kohima, they would hang the bodies of Naga leaders killed on the ramparts, from the ramparts. Konoma village was bombed out of existence. Naga homes were burned, Nagas were tortured, killed, Nagas were raped, and rape took place even in the churches. This is the kind of treatment that was given to the Nagas for resisting India's occupation of their homeland. What is, I think, very interesting and something to appreciate is that despite all this, the Nagas have always said that they are willing to sit down at the negotiating table. They are not seeking revenge for what the Indian state has done to them. They are saying, the Nagas are saying, come let us talk as people to people. You recognized my right to self-determination. You recognize my right to be ourselves, to develop ourselves according to our genius, our culture, our language, and let us not get into this kind of a situation where we will be forced to fight with each other. The latest ongoing peace process, unfortunately, is really going nowhere. 2015 framework agreement has virtually been abandoned. The 2015 framework agreement, as we all know, was in fact a unique agreement because it said it was between two entities. So in that agreement, technically Indian state had recognized the Naga people as a separate entity with which they were going to negotiate and decide sharing of power. The framework agreement also said all the agreements or all the decisions taken during the process of all the negotiation, the competences which will be, or the subjects which will be shared between the two entities, Indian state and the Naga. But subsequently, as we say, over the last 5 years, and particularly after the Indian government decided to do away with Article 370 and break up the state of Jammu and Kashmir and take away all the special privileges they had, including the Kashmiri people's own flag and their own constitution. It is quite clear that the Indian state or the present government does not, therefore, want to grant what has been agreed between the Naga negotiating team and the Indian state. Now, the whole thing being made out that NSCN-IM is backtracking on the issue of flag, on the issue of constitution, is in fact not a backtracking. This is what they're saying, and this is very much part of the negotiations that has been going on. Also, what has not been finalized so far, and that's the major, I think, question, is the integration of all Naga habited areas. Government of India goes on saying that it cannot agree because Naga inhabited areas are parts of Assam, parts of Manipur, and those states are not willing to part with those territories. The point is, territory does not belong to the state. The territory belongs to the people who live in, who work on it, who nurture that land, who grow things on it, and who provide food to others from that land. So the land is not owned by a state government. And all that was done partially by the British. The British gave away parts of South Naga to Manipur. The British had, in fact, put the entire Naga areas in under the administrative jurisdiction of Assam. All these are colonial institutions. All these are colonial practices. An independent country like India should not be holding on to the colonial past and the wrongs that the colonial government and the colonial power had done to the people over whom they had established control through use of force. And the same use of force should not be the way that an independent government and a republic and a democratic state should be doing. But unfortunately, as we see, that most of the colonial practices are being repeated and have been repeated in this country by the so-called independent government. As Vijayan has pointed out, currently we live in India, we live in a state of virtual terror. It's a police state. The constitution's protection to the rights of the citizens have all been thrown out. This BJP government has made major changes in all the institutions, in all the rules. The number of people that they have put in jail under these draconian laws of UAPA and NSA and PSA in Jammu and Kashmir runs into thousands. And these laws, under these laws, they can hold on to people for up to a period of 2 years without beginning the trial. Some of our very dear and close friends in civil society organizations, human rights activists, are in jail for 2 years or more. Father Stan Luduswamy, a Jesuit priest from Jharkhand, is 82 years old. They took him and put him in jail for conspiring to break up India under sedition. But the point is, the 18 months that he was in jail, the NIA never interrogated him, never asked him a question. A charge sheet was filed, yes. But this old man who was suffering an advanced stage of Parkinson's disease and got COVID, he still remained a great threat to India that the judiciary kept dilly-dallying on his request that his health was failing. He may please be given bail so that he could go back to Jharkhand. And he said he would like to go back and die there. He was denied. He died in jail. So we have a situation where judicially sanctioned murders are taking place of people against whom the state really cannot prove anything. So we have arrived at stage in India. And frankly speaking, I do not expect this government to abide by the agreement, the framework agreement. I hope they do. I hope they have the good sense. Because if they don't, then what will come is something that we cannot afford. The Naga people have the right to self-determination. They have fought for the last 75 years. They have sacrificed so much that we cannot even calculate. They've endured the harshest form of military repression, but they have not given up. In the process of this struggle, the various Naga communities living in disparate areas have come together. We have a Naga nation, which is emotionally integrated, socially integrated, and culturally integrated, with all the diversity of the various communities. It's not going to be going away. It's something that will last. And Indian state and rulers in Delhi better realize that the Nagas will endure. Nagas will continue to hold on to their rights and they will never give up. I salute the Naga people's indomitable spirit of freedom. I have known many Naga friends over perhaps the last 50 years. And I have always felt very happy among Naga people whenever I have visited various places in both Nagaland and South Naga. My salute to you and thank you for giving this opportunity to be with you on this important occasion. Bye.